Guys, it's Miss Simpson and it's time for reading today. We are going to review the topic of central idea. We can literally find the central idea of just about anything in our whole entire life. That is just what the text is mostly about, and not even just the text. Maybe what I could do a central idea over one of my teacher meetings. So we had a meeting today and I could give you the central idea about it. Well, the central idea today was math. We talked a lot about math and what we were going to do to help you guys out and how we were going to teach you math, specifically fractions and 2D shapes. Isn't that crazy? We can find the central idea about anything. A book like Gregor the Overlander, a chapter of Gregor the Overlander, we could do a passage. We could even find the central idea of a movie, a TV show. Central idea, guys, is just what the text is mostly about. So while we are reading, we should be looking for text clues to help us figure out what that central idea is, like headings, visuals, the first or last sentence, repeated words. All of those will give you clues on what the central idea is. So then we are going to evaluate those details to determine our key ideas that support the central idea. So when we think of central idea, we are focusing on, a table. So the tabletop would be your central idea, and the details are the legs that support your central idea. A lot of times we do a bubble map. So even when we are writing, we do a bubble map to figure out what our central idea of our essay is going to be. So on your current essay, you should have put free day in the middle. And then you gave me details that you're going to put in your essay about that free day. Why do you deserve a free day? Well, we work hard and we never have a free day. Whatever you chose about free day, you wrote that all in the bubbles around it. That's the same with our central idea. Your central idea would have been your free day, and then your details are why you deserve a free day. Well, same in the passages that you read in your STAR test. They have central ideas. Now, you here recently took a benchmark. There was one about honeybees, if you remember this one. There was honeybees, and I want to say it was honeybees and bats. So that would have been, a nonfiction passage about honeybees. The central idea would be that. And then all your bubbles around it would be all the different facts about your honeybees. Or your tabletop would be bats and all the facts that they gave you about the bats. So today we are going to read chapter 12 of Gregor the Overlander, and it's a little bit harder to do central idea, especially when we talk about fiction. But for your assignment, we are going to find what the central idea is of chapter 12 and some details in that paragraph or in that chapter that tell us that's what the central idea is. So as I'm reading and after, we're going to talk a lot about what the central idea is, and then your job is going to be to fill out your bubble map. So remember, central idea is what the text is mostly about. Central. It's the same thing as main idea. So let's read chapter 12. And while I'm reading, I want you to be focused in on what is the main event that happens in this chapter. What is the main thing that happens? And what are some details or events that happen because of it or during it? Just some things that happen in the chapter that support your idea. So let's go ahead and let's read chapter 12. Remember, while I'm reading, I'm going to ask questions. I might pause, make some comments. Y'all need to be paying attention to those. If I ask you to pause the video, please pause the video. Other than that, sit back, get comfy, and let's start reading. So remember, chapter 11, we ended off with the Anshul is dead, Daphne's dead, the rats found Shed and Fanger. So they found Shed, Fanger, those were the rats that they killed. Remember, they killed those rats and they set that beach on fire. And now the rats are dead. They found the rats. So one of their guards or somebody came crashing in the middle of a council meeting. Gregor was in a council meeting with all of the Underlanders, came crashing in, and they're saying that the rats are now hunting them and after them. And Gregor's got to decide real quick if whether he's going to go on this quest. And he's trying to convince the Underlanders to let him take Boots because he doesn't want to go anywhere without her. So let's go ahead and let's start reading. "Sound the alarm!" shouted Vicus, and the place exploded in frantic activity. Horns began blowing. People rushed in and out. Bats swooped in for orders and disappeared again without taking the time to land. Everyone ignored Gregor as they shifted into emergency mode. He wanted to ask Ficus what was going on, but the old man stood in the high hall in a blur of bat wings, giving commands. Gregor went out on the balcony and could see Regalia swarming like a beehive. Many rats were coming. The Underlanders were going into defense mode. Suddenly he realized they were at war. The terrifying thought and the height of the balcony made Gregor lightheaded. As he stumbled back inside, a strong hand caught his arm. Gregor the Overlander, prepare yourself, for we leave shortly, said Ficus. For where? Where are we going? Asked Gregor. To rescue your father, said Ficus. Now? We can go with the rats attacking? Said Gregor. I mean, there's a war starting, right? Not any war. We believe it is the war foretold in the prophecy of Gray, the one that may bring about the complete annihilation of our people, said Vicus. Pursuing the quest for your father is our best hope of surviving it, said Vicus. I can take Boots, right? Asked Gregor. I mean, I am taking her, he corrected himself. Yes, Boots shall come, said Vicus. What should I do? You said to prepare myself, asked Gregor. Vicus thought for a second and called Meredith over. Take him to the museum. Let him choose whatever he thinks may aid him on the journey. Ah, here is a delegation from Troy, said Vicus. He stepped into another storm of wings. Gregor ran after Meredith, who sprinted for the door. 3 staircases and several halls later, they arrived at a large chamber filled with loaded shelves. Here is that which has fallen from the overland. Remember what you choose, you must carry, instructed Meredith, thrusting a leather bag with a drawstring into his hands. The shelves were filled with everything, from baseballs to car tires. Gregor wished he had time to go through the stuff more carefully. Some of it must have been hundreds of years old, but time was a luxury he didn't have, and he tried to focus. Okay, I'm going to pause right there real quick. So far, I'm noticing the main thing that has been happening, the central idea so far, it might not be continued this way, but is they are preparing for their quest. So that is the main thing that has happened so far, and that is the main thing that we are talking about. So they're preparing by going to the museum, getting Gregor all set, getting him the supplies he needs. Let's keep reading. What could he take that would help him on the trip? What did he need most in the Underland? Light. He found a flashlight in working condition and collected batteries from every electrical thing he could find. Excuse me, guys. Something else caught his eye. It was a hard hat like construction workers wore. There was a built-in light on the front so they could see in the inky tunnels beneath New York City. He grabbed the hat and crammed it on his head. We must go, ordered Meredith. We must get your sister and take flight. Gregor turned to follow him, and then he saw it. Root beer, an honest-to-goodness, unopened, only slightly dented can of root beer. It looked pretty new. He knew it was an extravagance, that he should only take the essentials, but he had to have it. It was his favorite drink, and plus it made him think of home. He stuffed the can in his bag. The nursery was nearby. Gregor ran in and saw Boots sitting happily among 3 Underlander toddlers having a tea party. For a second, he almost changed his mind and left her there. Wouldn't she be safer here in the palace? But he remembered the palace would soon be under siege by rats. Gregor knew he couldn't leave her to face that alone. Whatever happened, they would stay together. Dulcet quickly helped Gregor into a backpack and slid Boots inside. She fastened a small bundle to the base of the backpack. Catch claws, she said, a few toys and some treats. Thanks, said Gregor, grateful someone had thought of the practical side of traveling with Boots. Fare you well, sweet Boots, said Dulcet, and she kissed the baby's cheek. Bye-bye, Dulcie, said Boots. See you soon. That was what they always parted with at Gregor's house. Don't worry, I'll be back. I'll see you soon. Yes, I will see you soon, said Dulcet, but her eyes filled with tears. Take care, Dulcet, said Gregor, giving her hand an awkward shake. Fly you high, Gregor the Overlander, she said. In the high hall, the mission was readying for departure. Several bats had lit on the ground and were being loaded with supplies. Gregor saw Henry hugging a painfully thin teenage girl goodbye. She was weeping uncontrollably despite his attempts to comfort her. The dreams, brother, she sobbed. They have worsened. Some terrible evil awaits you. Do not stress yourself, Nerissa. I have no plans to die, said Henry soothingly. There are evils beyond death, said his sister. Fly you high, Henry. Fly you high. They embraced, and Henry swung up onto his velvety black bat. Okay, I'm going to pause again. So they are still preparing for battle. All these people are doing all of these things to prepare for battle. So right now, if I had to guess the central idea, I would say they're preparing for their quest. And then Dulcet got boots ready. Gregor got a root beer, a flashlight, and a helmet light. Vicus prepared the bats. Henry said goodbye to his sister. Those are all of the details. Those are how they prepared for their quest. So far, that's the main thing that they have done. They also keep saying this same exact phrase, fly you high, Gregor the Overlander. What in the world are they saying? Remember, Underlanders, they talk weird. Fly you high. Fly you high, and I pause there for you to think. Fly you high means sort of like good luck. Do great, be safe. That's kind of what we would say. We'd say, okay, guys, love you, be safe, or have fun, have a great day. That's kind of what they're saying, be safe. Gregor watched nervously as the girl came his way. He could never think of the right things to say when people cried, but she had pulled herself together by the time she'd reached him. She held out a small roll of paper. For you, Overlander, she said. Fly you high. Remember, be safe. And before he could answer, she had moved away, leaning on the wall for support. He opened the paper, which wasn't paper, but some sort of dried animal skin, and saw that the prophecy of Grey had been carefully written upon it. That's so weird, thought Gregor. He'd been wishing he could read it again to maybe figure out more of it. He had meant to ask Vicus, but had forgotten in the rush. How did she know I wanted this? He murmured to Boots. Nerissa knows many things. She has the gift, said a boy mounting a golden bat beside him. On second glance, Gregor realized it was Lexa, but her hair had been cropped off close to her head. What happened to your hair? Asked Gregor, stuffing the prophecy in his pocket. Long locks are dangerous in battle, said Lexa carelessly. That's too bad. I mean, it looks good short too, said Gregor quickly. Lexa burst out laughing. Gregor the Overlander, think you my beauty is any matter in such times? Gregor's face felt hot with embarrassment. That's not what I meant. Lexa just shook her head at Henry, who was grinning back at her. The Overlander speaks true, cousin. You look like a shorn sheep. All the better, said Lexa, for who would want to attack a sheep? Bah, said Boots. Bah. And Henry laughed so hard he almost fell off his bat. Sheep says bah. Boots said defensively, which set him off again. Gregor almost laughed too. For a moment he felt as if he were among friends, but these people had a long way to go before he could consider them friends. To cover his slip, he concentrated on finding a comfortable way to carry his leather bag that would leave his hands free. He tied it to the side strap of the pack. When he glanced up, he found Lexa looking at him curiously. What wear you on your head, Overlander? She asked. It's a hard hat with a light, said Gregor. He flicked it off and on to show her. He could tell she was itching to try it, but she didn't want to ask. Gregor quickly weighed his options in his head. True, they weren't friends, but it was better to get along with her if he could. He needed her to get his dad. Gregor held out the hat. Here, check it out. Lexa tried to appear indifferent, but her fingers worked the light switch eagerly. How do you keep the light inside without air? Does it not get hot on your head? She asked. It runs on a battery. It's electricity, and there's a layer of plastic between the light and your head. You can try it on if you want, said Gregor. Without hesitation, Lexa popped the hat on her head. Vicus has told me of electricity, she said. She shot the beam of light around the room before returning it to Gregor reluctantly. Here, you must save your fuel. You will begin a new fashion, said Henry cheerfully. He grabbed one of the small stone torches off the wall and laid it on top of his head. Flames seemed to be shooting out of his forehead. What think you, Alexa? He asked, showing her his profile with exaggerated haughtiness. Your hair is a light, she suddenly gasped and pointed. Henry dropped the torch and beat at his hair as Lexa went into hysterics. Realizing it was a joke, Henry caught her in a headlock and rubbed her short hair with his knuckles while she laughed helplessly. For a minute, they could have been a couple of kids in the Overland, just a brother and sister like Gregor and Lizzie wrestling around. Vicus strode across the hall. You two are in a merry mood, considering we are at war, he said with a frown as he vaulted onto his bat. It is only an excess of spirit, Vicus, said Henry, releasing Lexa. Save your spirit. You will need it You will need of it where we are going. Ride you with me, Gregor, said Vicus, extending a hand. Gregor swung up behind him on his big gray bat. Boots kicked his sides with anticipation. Me ride too! Me too, she chirped. Mounts up, called Vicus, and Gregor and Lexa leaped onto their bats. Gregor could spot Sullivan and Meredith preparing to leave also. Meredith was riding a bat he hadn't seen before. Probably his other bat was still recovering. To the air, ordered Sullivan, and the 5 bats lifted off in a V formation. As they rose up in the air, Gregor felt like he would burst from excitement and happiness. They were going to get his dad. They would rescue him and take him home, and his mother would smile, really smile again. And there would be holidays to celebrate, not to dread, and music, and he was getting ahead of himself. He was breaking his rule right and left. In a minute, he would stop, but for that minute, he would go ahead and imagine as much as he wanted. As they veered sideways over the city of Regalia, Gregor was reminded of the gravity of their task by the manic activity below. The gates to the stadium were being fortified with huge stone slabs. Wagons of food clogged the roads. People carrying children and bundles were hurrying toward the palace. Extra torches were being lit in all quarters, so the city looked almost bathed in sunlight. Wouldn't you want it darker if there's going to be an attack? Asked Gregor. No, but the rats would. We need our eyes to fight. They do not, said Vicus. Most of the creatures in the underland, the crawlers, the bats, the fish, they have no need of light. We humans are lost without it. Gregor tucked that bit of information away in his brain. The flashlight had been the best thing to bring after all. The city quickly gave way to farmland, and Gregor had his first glimpse of how the Underlanders fed themselves. Great fields of some kind of grain grew row upon row of hanging white lamps. What runs the lamps? Asked Gregor. They burn with gas from the earth. Your father was most impressed with our fields. He suggested a plan for lighting our city too, but at the moment all light must go for food, said Vicus. Did an Overlander show you how to do that? Asked Gregor. Gregor, we did not leave our minds in the overland when we fell. We have inventors just as you do, and the light is most precious to us. Think you we poor Underlanders might not have stumbled upon some manner of harnessing it ourselves? Said Vicus good-naturedly. Gregor felt sheepish. He had sort of thought of the Underlanders as backwards. They still used swords and wore funny clothes, but they weren't stupid. His dad said even the cavemen had geniuses among them. Somebody had thought up the wheel. Sullivan flew parallel to them, and she was deep in conversation with a pair of bats that had joined the party. She uncurled a large map on her bat's back and scrutinized it. Is she trying to find where my dad is? Gregor asked Vicus. She's forming a plan of attack, said Vicus. My wife leads our warriors. She goes with us not to direct the quest, but to gauge the level of support we may expect from our allies. Really? I thought you were in charge. Well, you and Luxa, he said, because really he couldn't tell how that all worked out. Luxa seemed able to order people around, but she could still get in trouble for stuff. Luxa will ascend the throne when she turns 16. Until then, Regalia is ruled by the council. I am but a humble diplomat who spends his spare time trying to teach prudence to the royal youth. You see how well I succeed. Vicus said wryly. He glanced at Henry and Luxa, who were flipping wildly in the sky, trying to knock each other off their bats. Do not let Sullivan's gentle demeanor fool you. In the planning of battle, she is more cunning and wily than a rat. Wow, said Gregor. Her gentle demeanor had fooled him. Gregor shifted his weight on the bat, and something poked his leg. He pulled the prophecy Nerissa had given him from his pocket and unrolled it. Maybe now he would be a good time to ask Vicus some questions. So, do you think you could explain this gray prophecy to me? The prophecy of Gray, corrected Vicus. What if it puzzles you? The whole thing, thought Gregor, but he said, maybe we could just go through it a piece at a time. He studied the poem. Beware, Underlanders, time hangs by a thread. Well, that seemed pretty clear. It was a warning. The hunters are hunted, Whitewater runs red. He asked Vicus to unravel the second line. The rats are traditionally the hunters of the Underland, for they would happily track and kill the rest of us. Last night we hunted them to save you, so the hunters were hunted, while water ran red when we left their bodies to the river. Oh, said Gregor. Something was bothering him, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Gnawers will strike to extinguish the rest. Are the gnawers the rats? He asked. Exactly so, said Vicus. The hope of the hopeless resides in a quest. The quest to get his dad, so he'd escaped. The Underlanders had saved them, and now they were at war and off on the quest. Gregor suddenly knew what was bothering him. So this whole thing is my fault, he said. It never would have happened if I hadn't tried to escape. He thought of the approaching army of rats. What had he done? No, Gregor, put that from your mind, said Vicus firmly. You are but one player in a very long and difficult tale. The prophecy of Gray trapped you, as it trapped us, long ago. Gregor was silent. He didn't exactly feel better. Read on, said Vicus, and Gregor's head drooped to the page. The lights of Regalia had faded away, and he only had light to squint by the faint torchlight. An overland warrior, a son of the sun, may bring us back light, he may bring us back none. But gather your neighbors and follow his call, or rats will most surely devour us all. So you say this next part is about me, he said unhappily. Yes, you are the overland warrior for obvious reasons, said Vicus, although Gregor didn't think the reasons were too obvious. You are a son of the sun, as an overlander, but also the son who seeks his father. This is the sort of comedic wordplay Sandwich delighted in. Yeah, he was such a funny guy, said Gregor glumly. Ha ha. Now the lines that follow are most gray, said Vicus. Sandwich could never clearly see if in fact you succeed in bringing back light or if you fail, but he most adamantly insisted we attempt the venture or die by the rat's teeth. Well, that's not too inspiring, said Gregor, but for the first time, Sandwich had struck a chord with him. The possibility that Gregor might fail made the whole prophecy more plausible. What sort of light am I supposed to bring back? Asked Gregor. Is there a sacred torch or something? That is a metaphor. By light, Sandwich means life. If the rats can truly extinguish our light, they extinguish our life as well, said Vicus. A metaphor? Gregor thought an actual torch would be easier to bring back. How could he bring back some metaphor thing he didn't really understand? That could be tricky, he said, and he read on. 2 over, 2 under of royal descent, 2 flyers, 2 crawlers, 2 spinners ascent. What are all those 2s about? Asked Gregor. That tells us whom we must persuade to accompany us on the quest. We are proceeding as if the 2 over are you and your sister. 2 under of royal descent are Luxa and Henry. Henry's sister Nerissa, as you might have gleaned, was not a possible choice. Flyers are bats. Crawlers are cockroaches. Spinners are spiders. We go now to assemble our neighbors in the order that the prophecy dictates. First, the bats. The number of bats had been increasing as they flew. Henry led the party into a vast cave. Gregor gave a little jump when he realized the ceiling was bumpy with hundreds and hundreds of hanging bats. Woo, sorry guys. But don't we already have bats? Asked Gregor. We need official permission to take them on the quest, said Vicus. Also, there are matters of war to discuss. A towering cylinder of stone sat in the center of the cave. Its sides were slick as those of the palace. On the round, flat top, a group of bats waited. Vicus turned back to Gregor and whispered, We humans know you to be the warrior, but other creatures may have doubts. Whoever you think you may or may not be, it is essential that our neighbors believe you are the one. Gregor was trying to unwind that in his head when they landed next to the bats on the huge pillar of stone. The humans all dismounted. Deep bows and greetings followed on both sides. One particularly impressive silvery white bat appeared to be in charge. Queen Athena, Vicus said, and presented him. Meet you, Gregor, the Overlander. Be you the warrior? Be you he who calls? Asked the bat in a soft purr. Well, actually, Gregor saw Vicus frown and pull up short. He'd been about to go into a spiel about how he wasn't the warrior, but then what? Vicus had whispered something about others believing he was the one. There was a war beginning. The bats weren't likely to send off valuable flyers on a wild goose chase. If he denied he was a warrior now, the quest would be called off and his father would be as good as dead. That sealed it. Gregor stood up straight and tried to control the quaver that slipped into his voice. I am the warrior. I am he who calls. The bat was still for a moment and then nodded. It is he. She spoke with such certainty that for a second Gregor succeeded in thinking of himself as a warrior, a bold, brave, powerful warrior that the Underlanders would tell stories about for centuries. He could almost see himself leading a squadron of bats into battle, stunning the rats, saving the Underland from... Gaggo, I peed, announced Boots. And there he stood, a boy, in a goofy hard hat, with a beat-up flashlight and a bunch of batteries he hadn't even tested to see if they still had juice. The mighty warrior excused himself and changed a diaper. And that's the end of chapter 12. All right, I know that was long, so I'm going to make my explanation short. What's the main thing that happened in this chapter? When I was reading, the very beginning talked about them preparing for the quest, And the end talked about them starting a quest. So I would say preparing and starting for a quest is kind of the main thing that happened. So this is where you're going to put that central idea. And then on the outside, I want you to tell me some things that they did to prepare. I want you to tell me some things that they did when they left on the quest. Where did they go? Who were they trying to convince first? It was the bats they were trying to convince. So again, this is your central idea of chapter 12. And these are some events that happened in the chapter. All right. When you finish that, take a picture of it, turn it in. Love you guys. Sorry that was a long chapter, but tomorrow's I think is a little